Democracy started in Rome thousands of years ago. So the idea was that people self-represented. Obviously, the population was not that much at that time. Assalamu alaikum and hello to everyone. My name is Asad Rana, and I've been thinking for some time to do some writings. And alongside writings, which is a passion to write about the status of society and various matters affecting the social fabric of a society, but also in terms of what is important in the society, where the priorities of the society should lie, and what is the overall health. And that is obviously my opinion. Feel free to disagree if you do not agree with something I say. But the reason for me to come in and start this series about educating people is primarily that I've seen in the society there are a lot of people who have taken lead, and best of luck to them, especially in minority communities. But the problem is that they themselves lack the understanding of how things work. They're inherently incompetent. They have ulterior motives. For instance, self-glorification, as opposed to having the true matters or interests of the community at heart. So I will just start off with democracy itself, right? One of the reasons why we have come to this point in democracy, democratic societies, and this point I'll clarify later, there has been a blind bandwagon sort of following as to what democracy should mean, the electoral democracy in particular, and how we've been following mice behind Pied Piper. And the reality of the matter is that democracy itself was a beautiful concept. It was something that was supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. In its original sort of manufacturing, if you like, it was meant to be decision making by community, by the people of society, to make rules and laws for the society and which are going to be beneficial to the society. Democracy started in Rome thousands of years ago. So the idea was that people self-represented. Obviously, the population was not that much at that time. So there would be motions put before people and they would vote on it. If majority of the people voted as aye or yes, then the motion would be carried, would be accepted, and it would become law in its own right. If it was refused, then it was put aside. Time progressed. The question today from there and then group dominated or parties dominated democracy came into existence. There was good reason for it because the population became so much where you have to make laws or rules, but people then started electing representatives from each group, each community, each area, geographical area at the moment. And this is how, for example, from the suburb of, I don't know, St. Albans, there would be people standing up for elections, and then there'll be voting done, and a representative would be picked. And this is what is happening at the moment. There are mostly people from the political parties, or two major political parties at the moment. So in Australia, for example, and I'll talk in the context of Australia because it's more relevant. We have Labour Party, we have Liberals. Labour tend to be left centralist, and then we have liberals who tend to be right, center sometimes, mostly right, I would say. But this is, and then we have Greens, of course. We can't forget Greens. That's the third force, which is not major force, especially in elections this time around. They have suffered quite a bit of defeat, if I may say. So these are three parties really, and two of them are major. Greens comes in and goes on the picture, depending on how effectively they've run their campaigns. And then there's a fourth element to it, or a fourth type of electables, and they're independents. And these are the people who do not have the political backing of any of the major parties. So the question is that, is democracy in Australia delivering for the people? That is the main question. So can we say that the democracy in Australia is working for everyday person? Is it controlled by certain political parties, media influence, and big donors? So we'll explore the electoral democracy concept. Who really holds power in Australia? And then we'll briefly discuss why independent candidates are important and why are they taking legal action for fairer playing field. So what is electoral democracy? To start off, means that citizens, they vote to choose representatives. Over 90% of Australia's lower house, the seats in there are held by candidates from major political parties. And as I said, liberals or liberal. Now, voters, they choose a name on the ballot, but behind the scene, those individuals are often bound by party agendas. They're not really concerned about community needs. So the real question is, how representative is that in actual fact? One may disagree with the dominance of political parties, and I'll tell you the reason. So let's break down how parties gain control in the overall scheme of things. First concept when it comes to the party politics. We have something called pre-selection. So pre-selection is where the party insiders decide who's allowed to be a representative. It is not really a process where anyone can raise a hand and say, look, I want to run for a certain seat, whether it's, it is not really representative. And I'll give you some examples down the track. First is the pre-selection. And in pre-selection, this is where party insiders decide who's allowed to run. Then there is the party whip system, and that forces the members of parliament to vote along the party lines, even against the wishes of the electorate. So an example of Fatima Payman recently, where she rose against party lines, so to speak, because she spoke in the favor of Palestine and opposed the silence of the government, if you like. Labour, by the way, who seems to project an image of left centralists. They obviously were, and still are, I think, a bit deficient in, upholding the truth and the true Australian values when it comes to supporting the oppressed. And that is quite relevant in what happened. So Fatma Payman, a senator, she went against the party lines, and everyone saw what happened, kicked out of the party. She may have been representing her electorate, and I think no one tested that. So it is wrong to say that the electorate thought one way or the other. But before that, the party whip system came into action, and technically it sort of disabled her, cancelled her, whatever you want to call it. Now, once a party has a majority, and they won the elections, it can pass legislation without real debate or compromise. And that is another distinguishing feature of the current party dominated electoral democracy. And what is the result? There are fewer voices of dissent. Policies, the public policies are shaped by internal politics, and it's not really public demand. Now, what is the role of media in the whole thing? Political coverage obviously is very important. Now, social media has become important, relevant over the past, I would say, maybe 5 to 6 years. But it's still not to that extent relevant because, first of all, everyone is not really interested in political discussions, political videos, political messages when they have the choice. Whereas if you're, on a mainstream media channel, then it's right in your face. Obviously you can change if you have remote control, but still it is right there. So if you have to spend time before the TV, it is harder for you to, for example, flick through and, pick something else. And you will see it regardless. And sometimes the sensationalism comes in and, you feel bound to see it. They are catchy sort of introductions to these campaigns and whatnot. Political coverage, in fact, focuses heavily on party leaders. Talk about, for example, the current campaign. You've got likes and dislikes about the leaders of those parties, whether it's Labour, Liberals, or Greens even. And Greens probably don't get that much of exposure, but Labour or Liberals. Independents, those not backed by major parties. Now, they often get minimal airtime. I can't remember much airtime for anyone, as a matter of fact, right? They are left out of mainstream analysis. No one talks about them. Most of the people don't even know what their agendas are because they don't have the money to go in and propagate their manifestos, for example. And they're limited drastically, I would say, in convincing the public opinion. Many voters, as a matter of fact, wouldn't even hear from what the independents have to say or whether they stand for something. So it's not really level playing field, one can argue. The independents are not really given the proper platform to educate or to convince people why they are the right candidates. So it's always a debate between Liberals and Labour. Now, follow the money. Next, party donors. When you follow the money, you'll see who holds the real power. Now, political parties, they receive millions from property developers, industry group, unions, and those donors don't just fund campaigns. They often influence political decisions, political decisions, or policy. They even have large influence on how decisions are going to be made. Not just decisions, but how policies are going to be made. Labor, employment, your foreign policy, taxation, wherever there is revenue coming into the government, or the government has to have the cost and expenditures. It's really affecting everything. Political parties, they receive millions from property developers, industry groups, and unions. These donors, they don't just fund campaigns. They often influence policy decisions. In 2022 alone, just 5 donors contributed over $9 million to major parties. It's not really that they're doing a social responsibility of some sort. There's a lot of examples that I can go over, but the purpose is not to bore you, but just to make a point that major political parties, they would have their own agenda, and it's not about what they say to the public that they're going to implement it. A lot of time they do the backflips and the change based on whatever, pressure is put internally, not from the public, because the public obviously They made a promise to the public, a statement to the public, and that was the popular opinion. That is how they got elected. But then down the track, the backflip comes because somewhere inside the party there was noise that sort of made them unhear everything that they had promised to the public, and that noise is so strong that it made them change it, and they did a backflip. They had to do a backflip, and obviously, like I said to you, the primary reason is that there are some donors who have spent a lot of money in their campaigns, and now they want certain results from it. Whatever they say to you, they're not going to necessarily do that when they go get in power. Things are going to change. If you, on the other hand, vote independent, there is a much bigger chance because they don't have any party lines. They're not going to be, maybe they're going to be influenced, but they're not going to be under direct control of their interior party politics. They will have to consider more the interest of their electorate, because if they go against that, unlike in the big party system or party dominated system, they're not concerned about whether they're going to get pre-selection next time or not, right? They are not waiting for a ticket from Labour or Liberals or Greens or anyone else for that matter. So independents, because they don't have party lines, they don't have any ideological baggage. They just directly serve their constituents. Whatever their electorate wants, they do that. And if they don't, then they have a high price to pay. They're not going to get elected next time. But where is the money going to come in from to the public treasury if everyone is going to pay lower tax? So what do we do at the moment? The party dominated politics comes in, and they will listen. Labour will listen to unions or whoever their political donors, and Liberals will listen to corporates and whoever are their political donors. By the way, political donors nowadays are mixed. So in essence, you would have the traditional supporters of one party now supporting both sometimes. You know, so that is the state of affairs at the moment. Like I said, follow the money, and you'll get your answers. Why things are not working in your favor? Why we still have housing crisis? Why we still have taxation issues? Why have we got immigration issues? A number of these issues are rooted in the big political parties following the will of their donors. So all the best to you, and until next time, take care.